Hello and welcome to another video session of geekvale. Alright, we're going to talk about functions, its notations and representations, and what is the difference between independent and dependent variable. Okay, so let's get rid of that quickly. To understand the concept of what a function is, let's take example of a printer. A printer, you can say it's like a box. On one end of that box is the paper tray where you insert the paper, and what comes out from there is the printed paper, right? And in between these two ends there is this box which is doing what? Performing printing. So I can say that the quality of the printed paper depends on, first thing first, the paper, second, what kind of printing is performing on the paper. So in other words, I can say that the printed paper depends on the paper as well as the printing. The paper is what I can call the input to this printer. The printing is actually the process that is being applied to the paper, or in other words, the printing is the process that is applied to the input, and that gives us what? The output, which is what? My printed paper. So if I put that in some different arrangement, I can say that the printed paper that I got after the processing, I can say this is actually the processed paper, or I can say it's the processed input, right? I can say that. Now what is printed paper? Printed paper is also my output. So I can say that my output is what? Processed input. When the input is done processing, I will get what? My output. Mathematically speaking, the function actually defines a rule or the relation between two variables. Now what is the independent and the dependent variable? What is the independent and the dependent variable? Over here, I can pick paper by my own choice. I can pick photo paper, I can pick 60-gram paper, I can pick 70-gram paper, and the printed paper comes out irrespective of what kind of paper I'm picking. That means, as I mentioned earlier, the quality of the printed paper depends on what I pick here. This is my choice, whilst this printed paper depends on what I pick here. So I can say that my input to this printer is independent, whilst the output, the printed paper, is dependent. Now going back to my previous wordings, mathematically speaking, a function is a rule that defines a relation between two variables, variable 1 and variable 2, whereas this one, whichever one is serving as the input, is the independent one. You can pick that by your own choice. Whereas the variable 2, which is the output, this is dependent. Dependent on what? It depends on your input. In between these two is the box, which serves as the process. Or you can say this is actually the rule that links these two things with each other. Now a very famous mathematical variable that we mostly choose, the independent one or the input, is what you call the x. The dependent one or the output is what you call the y. For the process being applied on x, like the printing being done on the paper or the processing being done on the input, the function processing in mathematics is f. That represents the processing of the function or the rule that is being applied onto the input, and that is f on the input x. Now f is what defines the rule that links my output with my input. As you can recall that the input is independent, we can pick that by our choice, whilst the output, it depends on the input, right? So let's say if a rule, let's say for example that the rule says that f of x is equals to x plus 1. That is doing what now? Whatever the input is gonna be, the rule adds 1 to that and gives us the output. Okay, let's say my input is 0. 0 plus 1. This is the process being done on the input. Gives me the output what? 1. Now see and pay attention how the output is depending on the input here. Look, if I want the output say 3, it has to be 2 here. If it's anything other than 2, I cannot get a 3, right? If it's 1, I will get 2, right? So if the output wants to be 3, he will have to request that can you please pick a 2 here, because I want to be 3. Okay, so 2 plus 1 will result in 3, and 1 plus 1 will be 2. So the inputs are here. That's the process being done on the input, and that's the output. So can I say that the output is the input after the process is done on it? Y is f of x. C, are these same or not? The process input, or can I say see if the process is being done on the input that is being in process, if that is equals to f of x is doing what? Adding 1 to x, right? And if f of x, the process being done on the input, this is equals to x of x plus 1, can I say that y is also x plus 1? From there, because the output was equals to the processed input. The processed input was what? The processing of the input that is being in process. So if x plus 1 is equals to f of x, and if f of x equals to y, I can say that y is equals to x plus 1. This, or y equals to f of x equals to x plus 1, that's what you call a function that defines this f, defines this rule between this x and this y, right? Now let's go to different notations. Notation is already done, the f of x, or you can call it y equals to x plus 1, y equals to